Hi. So over the past year, I've been hosting a Minecraft server for my friends based on the late SMP Earth, and it has seen a few iterations. This server is the third, and has been the most active and developed of them all. Since we've gotten bored and are ready for a restart, I've decided to give the world a proper send-off by touring the world, reminiscing on old builds and explaining the pseudo-lore. I hope you enjoy. We'll kick off at one of the first builds on the server, a small shack on the coast of Antarctica. This used to be the home of the Antarctic Empire, or Antarctica, whatever, before they migrated into Rome. Since there are no villages on the map, the villagers were cheated in here, and Antarctica became the center of the villager trade. Now, it lays here abandoned. Anyway, off to the next stop. Our next stop is along the coast of South America, the Falkland Islands. Here was the first minor conflict of the server's history between Colombia and the UK. As we can assume from the various banners and just the overabundance of them, the UK won this fight. Off the other coast of South America lie the Galapagos Islands, once a secret villager hideout. Why were these villagers hiding? Well, the villagers that were hidden were robbed in the town of Cartagena. They were robbed by the clan known as the Trifrat. They were hidden here as a preventative measure, so it would not happen again. This didn't really work. After a few days they were discovered, and before they could be robbed again, they were sent off in flying machines to the Congo. That's why there's this giant tower here. Welcome to Cartagena, the walled city. As mentioned before, this was the site of the villager heist. More importantly, this city is the former capital of the Colombian Opulent Omnipotent Monarchy, or COOM for short. Colombia was a very colonial country for a while. They claimed half the freaking world, at one point owning all of South America, until they unified with the UK very early on. The reason they unified was mainly to assist the development of various projects of the UK's, but also for protection against the fiendful Trifrats. Maybe a bit biased, but... And over the Caribbean, we find Haiti, a village once part of the Kingdom of France. Now it is part of the UK, but it still has a rather large French demographic. I suppose there was a Trifrat attack here at some point. I mean, not like a straight up attack, they were just threatening. And, I mean, it's a big treehouse village, I don't have much else to say. It looks nice. But, onward. Next is quite an interesting build, Mexico City, or at least I think that's what it's called. It's the capital of Mexico, but it's in Yucatan, and it was actually the site of the first battlefield of the server's history. The war between Mexico and the alliance of the UK, the Chow Dynasty, Yugoslavia, and more. I don't quite remember who was a part of it, but those were the main people. Obviously, the Mexicans were outnumbered and lost, but they did fight really well, and the alliance really could have lost easily. They fought hard, They established themselves as a strong military power. In the ages to come, their regime would become incredibly unstable, resulting in their leader self-exiling to a building in Britain. Here in California is the city of San Franslovakia, Petuxlavia. Not too important city, but it's notable since it's a city built by one guy. I think there was going to be some sort of expansion out, but it was cancelled. On the coast of the James Bay, Hudson Bay area, is a shack with seemingly no real significance. I mean, if San Franslovakia had no significance, then this probably doesn't either. But that is wrong. This shack is the final resting place of that scary tricrad regime I was talking about earlier. After being hunted into hiding and eventually being found, a hitman of the Chow dynasty nearly assassinated the leader of the tricrads, only to offer him safety in the dynasty of Chow. Over here is the only claim of the Treborien Kingdom, a big hole. They're one of the few factions that don't really have any historical impact on the others, but that's okay. I think everybody has the right to be in this, so. And lastly, for mainland North America, the now abandoned Sault Ste. Marie. Formerly part of the Greater Lakes faction, before it merged with Rome. I mean, you know, it's got an actual road. It's more than I can say I have. Here's Greenland, the totally inconspicuous secret headquarters of the New Chow Order, aka the Dynasty of Chow. The base was established in the fallout of the Great Chow-Yudish War, when their original home was destroyed. To describe them as a faction, imagine sleazy car salesmen mixed with crusaders. That's the Dynasty of Chow. Next up is a base in Norway that we'll just call Iean, spelled I-E-A-N. That's how it was spelled by the Chow people. Anyway, this was the original base of operations of the old Tricrads. Now, so far during this tour, we've heard a bit about the Tricrads, and you probably think they were some big scary faction, and they were, right? For a while, they were bent on pillaging and intimidation tactics, or at least they threatened to pillage, a lot like the Vikings. They took advantage of the anger towards the UKEU's overexpansion, which we'll get into, and planned a coalition force against the UK. When the UK caught wind of this, after trying some diplomatic options, quote-unquote, an incident in Haiti, on what I talked about earlier, led to Fort Iean to be carpet-bombed, chasing off the Tricrads over to that base for a pretty long time. And over close by is the town of Berlin, the former capital of the German Empire. The German Empire was once the biggest faction in the world, spanning from Alsace to Kamchatka. Having this much territory and very little resources to manage it only made them lose the territory and a lot of morale. They would eventually unify with Petuxlavia to the east, with the UK taking West Germany without their consent. This move caused outrage, and partly the aforementioned coalition against the UK. So, this town here has a name not suitable for our audience. I will probably censor it. It is the capital of Petik, and it has been dubbed HungaryForP. To make way for its foundations, the forest here was set on fire and burnt to the friggin' ground. A lot of wasted resources there. It was initially planned to be in Slovakia, but the planners missed by about 100 blocks or so, maybe, I don't know. Petik itself is known as the religious center of the world. This church might be familiar. I mean, it was renovated, it used to look different. And I do want to bring up the fact that, this was all made by, like, one dude, basically. I mean, there was some help. But it was mainly one guy, and it started with, like, a bunch of building tutorials, just following building tutorials, like the castle there and some of these other buildings. But over time, as those unique tutorials became more and more scarce, buildings were made from scratch. And it's kind of hard to tell which are which, and I think that just shows this dude has learned. Welcome to Siberia. Yeah, as you can see, it's very barren. It's got a church, some eerie symbols. It's even got a DOC bunker. DOC being short for Dynasty of Chow. At one point, it was the home of the Siberian Empire, which was made by the same guy as the Greater Lakes, which was eventually abandoned as well. But this came before, and they united with Antarctica to create Rome. This is the small town of Ulan-Ude, Buryatia. The faction is pretty big, encompassing eastern Siberia, but has very little diplomatic or military power. It is known as a socialist haven, I suppose. Very cottagecore, and potentially the result of past German settlers. Who knows? Owned by nobody is Japan. Barely anything is built here. Why show this? Well, because it's cursed. Every faction that has a claim on Japan, that was their main claim, has disappeared. There was Japan, there was Glove, and there were other factions in the past, and they've all just been active and disappeared. And that's lovely. Another vulgar Petik town name, SaigonnaStealYoB. Located in Vietnam, it has design inspirations from all over East Asia. That's partly sarcasm, but whatever. Once it was griefed by a lava cast built by Rome, which thus has kind of been dismantled entirely. This is the CRCA's replica of the Shwedagon Pagoda, which in real life is in Burma/Myanmar, but here it's in Sri Lanka. Anyway, let's get back on track, away from this fried egg. I don't have much to say about this place, but it's been razed to the ground. Okay, back on track, we enter Brunei, formerly a forest burnt down by a real-life environmentalist. Irony aside, this is the secondary capital of the CRCA, and that's all I really need to say. As we make our way down Australia, I want to briefly mention New Zealand, which it wasn't an active or important faction by any means, but it still was a faction, and so I thought I'd mention them. And we reach the Petaxlav colony of Westralia in the town of MelBurnAustralia, which ironically was burned down. By who, you asked? The Chow Eastralians, of course. Who else would it be? Westralian spies participated in the War on Christmas and the War on Chow, and therefore Westralia was sort of a prime target of the Chow dynasty. Speaking of Eastralia, let's make our way over there. Let's talk about Eastralia briefly. Owned by the DOC, Eastralia is the home to an abandoned horse stable, and that's it. The horses here were transported on a long bridge to Madagascar. That's all this bridge here has ever been used for. You know what, I won't bore you with this. On the other end of the horseshit bridge is the island of Madagascar, the ruins of a fallen dynasty. Before the dynasty of Chow moved to Greenland, this was their home. It's a bit tragic to see this nice looking village in ruins, but what happened? The Great War, also known as the Great War, the Yiddish War, the Chow War, the Chow-Yiddish War, the War on Christmas, whatever. It started because the Yiddish Caliph was spotted close to Madagascar, and the Chow people did not like that. This kind of raised tensions until inevitably war broke out between the two. There's the morals, what actually happened. So, war broke out between Ulan-Ude and the Roman Empire very briefly. And even though there was a war between them, they were both less fond of the dynasty of Chow than they were of each other. So they thought, you know, hey, these guys are kind of threatening. Why don't we put our differences aside and screw with them? So Rome acted as sort of a double agent for the DOC and Ulan-Ude, mainly for Ulan-Ude, and many other spies were sent in. The dynasty of Chow, they hired mercenaries to hunt down the Yiddish. At the peak of the war, these mercenaries blew up Ude's base, and there was a trade of blows here. A flying machine was sent into here, blew it up. The dynasty of Chow was not nearly as affected as Ulan-Ude, and due to a miscommunication between the commanders, the mercenaries ended up destroying all the valuable items, contrary to the orders of the supreme leader, or whatever he's called. And that's why they moved to Greenland and sought revenge. Anyway, now to one of the least interesting factions. So the Chow Tower should be right over there, but anyway. Here's one of the least interesting factions. Chisena / Sofala. You know, I really mean that. They just kinda existed. They owned a lot of South Africa, and that's about it. And no real significance in the world. They just existed. Alright. East of the Congolese rainforest lies the capital of the Congolese Republic of Central Africa, or the CRCA, which owns more than Central Africa. It's kind of an outdated name. The area here got hit with a buttload of chunk errors due to a server crash, so that should explain all the weird terrain. It was smoothed out, and it wasn't fun. The CRCA is the oldest faction on the server. In fact, it predates the server itself. I mentioned earlier that this is the third server, technically. This faction was established by the end of the first server. It has strong ties with Ulan-Ude, thus, really does not like the Chow dynasty. I actually never knew that that was a building that existed. Oh, that's cool. Speaking of Ulan-Ude, let's check them out. This is the Caspian Sea. Alright, if it loads in, oh my god. This is the Caspian Sea, home to Uitland's sugar reserves. There was a plan to turn the entire sea into a farm, but that would be too much of a task. To its west is, well, I like to call this place, Ude Lake. I don't know why, I guess it's just a nice lake. This is the former capital of Uitland. It's been carpet-bombed by the dynasty of Chow. Who else? It was replaced by Babylon, the new capital of the Udish Caliphate. The base itself isn't that important, so I'll take a moment to explain Uitland's history instead. Uitland has a history of war and annexation, revolution, and liberation. It started relatively small, owning Iran, the Caucasus, parts of Arabia, and Greece. In the early days, they had a rivalry with the Roman Empire. A revolt in Greece pressured the Udish to join the Roman Empire, and they did. After some time of helping Rome with whatever, the Udish revolted and won. They did it hard enough that they partitioned Rome. Some of the results of this partition was Greece was given to Rome, and Uitland gained its independence, and an international zone was set up in Constantinople. After disputes over Greece with Rome and a tense rivalry with the dynasty of Chow emerged, the false alliance between Rome and the dynasty of Chow was formed, and the Great War started. Due to the dynasty of Chow's manhunt of the Caliph, many backup vaults across the world have been built for his purposes. As our first Mediterranean base, we see Suez. One of the only Petrislav cities without a wacky name, aside from Berlin. But like Berlin, it used to be a part of Germany. It's kind of a science haven for biologists, mainly in the field of, from what I've been told, biology of cat reproduction, which is interesting. And I'd say that Suez was the first modern style city on the server. And over to the west is Cyrenaica. Cyrenaica is a colony of the UK-EU, more so a sand quarry and nuclear testing site of the UK-EU. What is now a lagoon here, this whole area was once sanded up. It was actually, I mean, it's been covered up again, otherwise we just see a bunch of stone, but it used to be part of the desert, and all the sand here was used to build the UK-EU's quote-unquote castle. You'll see what I mean by that. And up north, do you remember what I said about the Greek revolt? Uitland. Well, welcome to Greece, land of the Spartan revolt that led to the creation of New Rome. Now it's owned by Uitland, if you can't tell. I guess the reason it's so prized to the Romans is because of this vineyard bathhouse. I guess the Udish just want it. They very much own it. There used to be a Greek flag here. Also Constantinople's over there. Speaking of New Rome, Italy. Not too far away. Owned by none other than the UK-EU. As a result of the Second Udish partition, the UK-EU owns Italy. This was once the capital of Rome, before they realized it was too mountainous to build. A lava cast was built and then destroyed. A canal was dug, the Italian Canal, and there was a very questionable fast food joint established. The lava cast and the fast food joint were torn down. The Italian Canal in question would eventually be expanded all the way to the Black Sea with the drainage of the Adriatic Sea. And next to Italy is the Colosseum, which I wish I could say more about. I mean, there's a gift shop. Down under is the CRCA's World Wonder, Giza in Tunisia. A pyramid with a maze and a tomb and not much else. It's also missing Tunisia by a bit. But on a more interesting note, New Rome. Situated in Algeria. New Rome, previously the Roman Reich, and previously before that, Antarctica, is a notable dictatorship. Two people started it in Antarctica, only for one of them to leave to Siberia and return. Upon his return, and the realization that Antarctica is really hard to terraform, they agreed to move to Rome and start a new empire. After a fast food-related incident, the Siberian left to start a new faction in the Greater Lakes. When Sparta revolted and Ulan was annexed into Rome, the Greater Lakes unified again, along with Sparta. They formed New Rome. They each had their own territories to govern, but within the shared borders, so, like how in real life the UK is, with, Scotland, Wales, etc. The balance was broken, though, when Ulan revolted and partitioned Rome, leaving them at first only with Italy and Algeria, but eventually more land was shipped off, and they were left with only Algeria. And as I mentioned a few times already, they acted as a double agent in the Great War. Cool. We're almost at the end. One of the results of the Yiddish partition is this: Valencia, led by the same guy who led Siberia and the Greater Lakes. They made a deal with the UK-EU to start a stock exchange system, which, while it never got built, its ideas led to an international system of currency, so that was pretty influential. On the home stretch is Paris, France, UK-EU, the same France that owned Haiti and the Caribbean islands. An incident in Haiti involving the Trihreds, which I've already mentioned 2 times, brought the French to unify with the UK for protection. Speaking of the UK, the UK. Finally, the capital of the United Kingdom of the European Union, the megacity of Britannia. So big, I can't see it all. This metropolis spans the entirety of the British Isles, and even drained up areas. I won't get too specific, because this is a goddamn huge place, but you can visit it through the World Download and check out what I've done. Although I will note that most buildings do not have interiors, and they're just kind of husks, but some of them do. Some of them have functional interiors. By the way, this is my city. I built this. So I'm the UK. I know more about my faction. Anyway, I will explain the history of the UK. The UK started its life by rapidly colonizing overseas territory, namely Syria, Turkey, Cyrenaica, Taiwan, Iceland, and Nova Scotia. Most of these colonies eventually fell out of use and were either abandoned or given up in an effort to work on urbanization rather than globalization. The first building constructed on the Isles was the Big Ben, which was originally going to be the centerpiece of the city. To make way for future development, the Irish Sea was drained to create the district of Sodor, an industrial haven. And the British Isles, were stripped of all mountains and forests, just flattened to the ground. After Colombia was integrated into the UK, the idea was proposed to build a life-size replica of the Gherkin in London. This is an actual tower built as much to scale as we could. The proportions are a bit off. Which would become the castle of the United Kingdom. This is what I meant earlier by Cyrenaican sand was used to build the castle. This is the castle. Worldwide development projects were funded, such as the various railroads, the Colosseum, and more. France and West Germany were integrated to form the United Kingdom of the European Union. Change the name. A glass wall was built around the island to protect against threats such as the Trihreds, who were destroyed. Fast forward a few real-life months, and the Great War is on the brink of happening. With tensions high, the Yiddish Caliph was given a secure penthouse. Collusions with Ulan would attract Chow mercenaries ready to destroy the city. I don't know really, I just remember during the war they appeared here. That was freaking terrifying. But before anything could be destroyed, the war ended. Since, 2 sides had already blown each other up, they decided it wasn't worth destroying another city. While the UK was never the most powerful faction in terms of, military strength, in terms of development and diplomatic power, they definitely reigned supreme. The capital of the world, I'd say. Look at this. this is what I've been doing over the past year. Like, it started in September of 2020. It is now September of 2021. To get this over with, since everybody was bored and we wanted to restart. I did actually restart the server. This is after the fact. I rushed Scotland. Scotland was the last finishing touch, and I wish I didn't, but I was getting really tired. And many of these buildings got renovated because, you know, they didn't look great, or, you know, I wasn't quite satisfied. One thing that I wish I could change, but definitely too late, is these roads. They're way too thin. Way too thin. Too thin for me. Aside from that, it's really nice. I'm really freaking proud of what I've done here. Would I do this again? Hell no. Maybe I'll make other cities, but none of this scale. This is what, if I go to statistics, time played, 25 days straight. 25 straight days of being on the server, and I'd say 99, or maybe not 99, 90% of it was spent here constructing stuff. And yeah, I don't take full credit. Many of these buildings, or not many really, that building specifically, were made by other people. The Gherkin, wasn't my idea, so obviously, I wasn't the only person building it. It's been a goddamn wild ride with this, but also a really boring one. I'd say, if you're ever playing Minecraft and want to do something big, don't do it too big. Make sure it's a bit manageable. Because this was, when I had ideas for something to build, it was great. But then a lot of the time, it just felt really monotonous and just painful. Thank you. It's been great. I'm going to end the tour now. I hope you liked that. I hope it wasn't too boring or too many cuts or whatever. Thank you.